Hello, and welcome to episode 562 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always, joined by Evan Silva. And today we have a very special guest. This young man you may know from the draft prop streets. You may know him also from the high school football coaching streets, where he was recently named defensive coordinator of one of the powerhouse football teams in New Jersey. He'll be sending some zero blitz in this fall. Going full Buddy Ryan. Also, you should know him from the Dynasty streets. It is our own Anthony Amico. How's it going today, buddy?
It's going good, guys. Always good talking to you.
Congratulations on the promotion. Do you want to tell the people any more details? Can you give them any more details about what kind of defensive schemes we'll be running this fall?
I thought you were up like in upstate New York or something. No?
No, I grew up in New York, but I've been in Jersey for about a decade.
Okay. All right. How far are you from Leone?
Oh, way far.
Oh, it's got to be far. Yeah. He's like up by Buffalo, right? It's got to be like 6 hours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, are we zero blitzing Amico? What are we doing as the new defensive coordinator?
I mean, we're definitely getting after it on third down. Yeah.
Okay.
We opened with like 2 of the 10 best quarterbacks in the state, so we're going to have to get a little creative.
Okay. Everybody likes a challenge. Evan, how's it going today?
Excited to talk some Dynasty today. I mean, we don't get to do this enough. I don't think we've had some requests, and we got to give the people what they want.
Yep, it is peak Dynasty season, rookie drafts, trading, et cetera, et cetera. As Evan said, on today's show, we're going to talk Dynasty and more specifically, how to think about buying low and selling high and the archetypes of kind of players that we like to buy low or sell high on. And specifically, we'll talk about a lot of players that fit those archetypes right now. Before we get into it, I have to let you know our 2023 Fantasy Football Draft Kit Pro is officially live. It's $49.99, covers everything you need to win your Dynasty, best ball, or redraft league. That means rankings for every format, context around those rankings, and most importantly, it's continuously updating to reflect the latest news and our team's thoughts. I really want to emphasize how hard we try at this. We're trying to be honest, accurate, concise with everything that we do. That's what you pay for, and in my experience, it's actually really hard to find in the industry, so head to the subscribe tab on EstablishTheRun.com for more details. All right, if you are new to the Dynasty streets, we do have a ton of content up on the site already that can help. Rankings, how to think about a startup draft, general trading tips, rookie draft rankings, etc. Today, I want to focus on trading in the market for specific players. And I want to talk about it realistically. Like, I'll listen to a Dynasty podcast. Like, I have a Dynasty team that had Ezekiel Elliott last year. And people are like, oh, sell Ezekiel Elliott. That's a great. Guess how many people in my league wanted Ezekiel Elliott? Ezekiel Elliott's trade value last year, even as he was running reasonably and getting, 50 or 60 yards a game, was literally zero. No one with a pulse was buying Zeke. And so I want to do this in a more authentic way. It's a hard exercise because when you do it authentically, it's hard. You kind of need to be both contrarian and right. So as we get into it here, I want to start with one avenue you can take in Dynasty trades, players coming off of poor seasons and buying on those players if you believe in their talent. Amico, you identified one in your article that I think makes a lot of sense if you believe in his talent. I think that remains to be seen, and that is Gabe Davis. Amico, we have Gabe Davis as wide receiver 31 in Dynasty right now. Dynasty ADP is at wide receiver 47 on Gabe Davis. Market has, I don't want to say given up, but really beaten down his value. What do you think about trading for Gabe Davis right now, Amico?
Yeah, I think something to note, like when you're buying this type of archetype, is that like there's still a chance that the person that you're trying to trade with values that player highly. Someone who likes Gabe Davis might still like Gabe Davis. Like, you might be dealing with the one guy in your league that still likes him. Now, with that said, I think that there's still a lot of avenues for Gabe to produce. Like, his situation really isn't a ton different than it was last year. They've added weapons, the Bills have, but none to really challenge him positionally outside. And he had that ankle injury last year, which basically cost him, 3 weeks during the season. Like, he missed a week. He was on the injury report 2 more weeks. And I think a lot of the reports have pretty much suggested that it bothered him all year. And he was still somewhat productive. So, he's still young. He's still playing in a great offense. It is a contract year for him. So I just think that this is an intriguing buy if you can get someone who's maybe souring on him towards the point the market has.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, like, youngish wideouts in good offenses are premium assets in Dynasty. Evan, I know you expressed concern that maybe Gabe Davis just isn't good enough. And obviously, like, when we talk about dynasty versus redraft, one of the things that I think matters way more in dynasty than redraft or best ball or anything else is just how good the guy is. Because I want to have him in the league as a starter for 6 and 7 years, and you need to be good to be able to do that. So, Evan, where are you at on Gabe Davis and dynasty and his talent level?
Yeah, if you remember, we had Matt Harmon on the show last year, and we talked extensively about Gabe Davis. And Matt Harmon wasn't overly impressed with him coming off his 2021 season. He had a average 2022 season, but Amico's right. First of all, I like that we're well ahead of ADP. I've been drafting him a ton on Underdog in best ball because he's fallen to that area where kind of nobody wants him, but he's still going to play 70, 80% of the snaps, I think, maybe at minimum. And the additions that they made, like Deontay Hardy is a certain type of player, and very different from Gabe Davis. Dalton Kincaid is also a certain type of player. He's a little bit of a threat, I believe, to Gabe Davis, but I think ultimately he's going to play in the slot more, and Gabe Davis is going to be a full-time player in a bankable offense with high scoring potential where Josh Allen is locked up long-term. I think he's a screaming buy, and I say that even with lingering concerns about how good he actually is. But like Amico did, you can tell yourself a little bit of story from last year that he was playing through that ankle injury, and the outlook is just as rosy as it was entering last season when people were taking him 3-4 turn in redraft.
Yep. Another guy that I just wanted to talk about coming off of a bad season, and this is a way worse season than Gabe Davis had, Kyle Pitts, coming off of one of the most disappointing seasons I can remember. Only played in 10 games, but only caught 28 passes in those 10 games. Coming off a bad season, but still plays a premium position, tight end in fantasy, 22 years old, already has a 1,000-yard NFL season under his belt. I think it's kind of going to be hard to find someone who just wants to completely give up on Kyle Pitts. Amico, would you consider Pitts in this same archetype of players coming off bad season that we should be trying to buy?
Yeah, so I think the big difference here is that we already feel pretty confident that Kyle Pitts is good. So because of the rookie season. So I think for that reason, it becomes a little bit more difficult to buy like a quote unquote dip here.
Yep. Okay. Another place I think you can
buy.
buy.
I'll tell you what. And I there was a video circulating on Twitter of all of Marcus Mariota's downfield attempts for Kyle Pitts last year. And it's an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
So again, you can absolutely tell yourself a story to where it was the situation. Now, I'm still concerned about the pass volume in Atlanta, but I'm with Amico. Look, this dude won the Mackey Award. He had 1,000 yards as a rookie tight end, and I'm with Amico. I think he's an easy buy. I think he's an easy buy.
And the difference between Kyle Pitts and some running backs or whatever, if you get Kyle Pitts at age 22 now and he does turn out to be good, the situation gets better, they get better quarterback play, you could have him for 8 years, and that's incredibly, incredibly valuable. And Kyle Pitts then kind of bleeds into the next archetype I wanted to talk about, which is talented players in bad team situations. I think Dynasty 101 is not overreacting to immediate team situation. This stuff changes all the time. Players get traded, players get cut, quarterbacks come in, all kinds of crazy things happen. Overreacting to micro team situation, I think, is a really big mistake people make in fantasy. And you could say that about Marcus Mariota last year with Kyle Pitts. Marcus Mariota was awful. I think Desmond Ridder is a clear upgrade on Marcus Mariota. We'll talk plenty more about that as we move along through the offseason. Titans, though, are an example of something the market seems to be out on. Treylon Burks, we have Dynasty wide receiver 17, market wide receiver 24. Chiga Kwanko, we have tight end 8, and market is tight end 15. And so people are like, well, the Titans offense is a mess. Tannehill, Will Levis, people don't like any of this stuff. So they've completely written off a lot of these Titan guys. Amico, what do you think about this archetype and how it relates to the Titans?
Yeah, I mean, I think these are the best guys to buy because I feel like we see this every year where dynasty players are just way overvaluing the team situation. Burks a year ago was someone that we were probably touting as a top 3 rookie pick. I think in most leagues, he was probably a top 5 or 6 rookie pick in a really good class. And his value is lower now than it was. I mean, I think that, Burks played well enough last year where we got to see some things that, are enticing to us, that's enticing to us. Okonkwo was awesome. I mean, I would say objectively, he was very good. He was second in yards per route run among all players, at least 40 targets, which is really impressive for a rookie tight end. It's a position we always say takes a while to develop. And these are kind of like the only two guys in Tennessee. So this is why like the team situation to me is not as big a deal, because I think that like they can make up for the pass volume stuff with target share, and we can get production right now. And then, as we go through the next couple of seasons, like their pass game and their quarterback situation definitely can improve. Like they've cut a lot of players. The defense might not be as good. The team might not be as good, where they're throwing more kind of as a result of that. We already know they tried to move Derrick Henry, or allegedly maybe try to move Derrick Henry during the offseason. Their backup, Tyjae Spears, like he's not really like a banger. Like he's definitely someone that you would have out there in passing situations. So, if this Levis thing works out, and I guess like the market in general isn't really super high on Levis, so that kind of contributes to this. Mm-hmm. But if that works out, like, we're kind of, this whole offense, I would say, is severely undervalued.
I don't know if you know this, Evan. Amico is a closet Will Levis stan.
I do know.
Don't let him fool you. He deep down he thinks Will Levis is very good.
Yeah, I know. We've talked about it before, and that's okay. We all make mistakes. No, but I'm open to Will Levis. I love how much higher we are in terms of ADP than the market on both of these guys. As Amico alluded to, the on paper target distribution looks extremely narrow in Tennessee. These are two other guys who I've been drafting the crap out of on underdog best ball, and I think it does translate to dynasty as well. Like, I think we saw just enough flashes from Treylon Burks to give us a fairly confident sense of optimism in him, and I think we definitely saw enough from Chig. Love both of these guys, and they're really cheap too. As I alluded to, we're way ahead of ADP on both of them.
Right, and this is going to be another Derrick Henry based offense. It's not going to be very good, et cetera, et cetera. That does not mean it's going to be like that forever. And these guys are extremely young, so certainly like that. I wanted to throw a name into the mix, and I don't know because this guy's a rookie and people love rookies, but like the situation for Marvin Mims in year one does not look great. Long term, though, it certainly looks better. Courtland Sutton's already 28. Me and Evan have talked plenty about all of Courtland Sutton's problems. Also, Judy and Sutton have both been linked in trade rumors. Tim Patrick has a ton of injuries. He's not the youngest guy either. So, like, and the first pick of Sean Payton made was trading up for Marvin Mims. And so, yeah, the situation right now does not look great. Long term, though, I do like Marvin Mims. Amico, I know another guy you're on way above market is Nico Collins, who has suffered through some absolutely awful quarterback play. But yeah, if you think CJ Stroud helps that situation a ton, I could certainly see it. What do you think about Mims and Collins and anyone else you want to mention in terms of players on bad teams?
Yeah, I think that Mims is super interesting because depending on like who you're with, like there's certain pockets of the fantasy community that are like super high on him, like would take him like early second round, or like you're not going to get that landing spot discount. Mm-hmm. But I totally agree that if you're going to get that, like if he's going to pan out, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and it's not going to matter who's in front of him. Like Courtland Sutton has not really been productive. They've been talking about trading him or Jerry Jeudy pretty much all off season.
Judy's in a contract year.
Yeah. Right. Like, so there's lots of ways for Mims to kind of get on the field. Like KJ Hamler's obviously not going to keep him off the field. Tim Patrick's coming off a major injury. We're not really sure, like, if Sean Payton values Greg Dulcich. So, like, there's lots of ways for him to get targets kind of right away. And even if he doesn't, I think, by 2024, we would expect him to be a starter. So, yeah, I think in general, buying guys like that is sharp. In the case of Collins, like, it's kind of similar to how I feel about Davis, where, like, I'm not seeing the challenge to him positionally. Like, they added the lightest receiver in the draft, pretty much. Like, he's probably going to be a slot guy in Tank Dell. They added Robert Woods. Like, maybe you think schematically, like as a catch and run guy, like he fits better. But like in terms of guys who can like win 50-50 balls and be downfield options, like they don't really have another guy that can do this other than Nico. So yeah. I think that they're still kind of leaving a lot of opportunity for him to play. And like you said, Adam, like the quarterback situation really can only get better from here. So, if that's the difference, like if that's really all that we're missing from him being a productive player, like that's going to happen right away, and you're going to kind of get immediate payback.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question of what you think about Stroud also, but I will say Nico did a very good job of earning targets last year. I know the competition wasn't stiff. Evan, any thoughts on Nico or any other players on bad teams you think are interesting in Dynasty?
Yeah, I'm kind of I'm kind of out on Nico Collins, and I mean, I still like his prospect profile. He's an awesome athlete, but I've heard that they don't think he's a great fit for the new offense for whatever reason, and I'm worried about him falling into the fourth receiver role and Tank Dell actually playing outside. They envision him as more like a Marquise Brown type, and then Mechie being the slot guy and Robert Woods kind of being the Z. So that's my devil's advocate take on Nico Collins. Again, I mean, hey, I like Nico Collins. I'm worried that he may need a change of scenery because apparently they're not high on his fit within the system, whatever that means.
Yep. All right. Let's go to the running back position. Most of my dynasty teams, I'm so like obsessed with wide receiver, and you'll actually see that in our rankings headed by Amico. I mean, most of the first 20 guys are wide receivers. That's what you want to build through in dynasty. And so on all my dynasty teams, I'm typically light at running back, which makes it hard to sell guys who are in a good spot. I mentioned that team I had Zeke. Like, I was going for a championship. I couldn't really sell Zeke because he was like the only running back that I had. I missed the window to trade him. Now I just have to like completely eat it. That's probably not the best dynasty strategy, but I was going for the win. I thought maybe it was okay. It's just really hard when you're so thin at running back to sell them at the peak. I think a candidate for the peak, and I bet Evan disagrees here, is Ramondre Stevenson. We have him about 8 spots behind ADP in dynasty, whereas in redraft, we're actually ahead of ADP on Ramondre Stevenson right now. But I think this is an interesting archetype in general, Amico, trying to sell running backs at their peak. I thought Aaron Jones came to mind, although maybe he's past his peak now. But Ramondre certainly, I mean, I've never felt this much optimism for a Patriots running back as I have right now.
Yeah, and Evan mentioned before, like using the redraft rankings when you're trying to evaluate these dynasty players. I think that's super sharp, like especially at this position. Like, we really cannot bank running back production past like a year, maybe 2. I mean, in the best possible outcomes, like a guy like Bijan, where you're like, okay, they draft this guy in the top 10. Like, clearly he's going to be the guy for a couple of years here. But the position is super fungible every single year. So, you look at a guy like Ramondre that there's basically consensus that he's going to be super good this year. We have him as like a top 10, top 12 guy in redraft. But like, you extend that out, it's kind of like, okay, well, Bill Belichick really doesn't have like a super deep history of feeding one guy the ball. Like he almost has like never done it. So to see that this year and then also think that you can forecast that past 2023 is really, really challenging, I think. And that, again, gives you an opportunity to sell for a guy who has, maybe similar year one production, per the best ball ranks or whatever, our redraft ranks you want to look at. And then pick up like a piece at a more premium position,
Mm-hmm.
So you trade Ramondre and you get, Cam Akers, who we like, and I don't know, pick a receiver that's like in that range,
I think that makes total sense as a dynasty strategy. I'm going to remain bullish on Ramondre Stevenson in redraft, like until, I don't know, they sign Leonard Fournette or something like that, which I don't know, because Thorman has brought this up, and they have shown interest in Fournette in the past. And Thorman is a Patriots guy, and I mean, I always take what he says seriously. But I mean, they've got 6 RBs on the roster right now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. But I mean, that would be a concern in the short term. But I'm going to stay bullish until I'm given reason not to on Ramondre Stevenson in redraft. I 100% agree with what Amico said about Ramondre Stevenson in dynasty.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say for the next 4 years. I think to Amico's point that Ramondre Stevenson is going to be the guy and very good for 4 years. And that's kind of where he's been like being valued at right now in dynasty. So I think that's a good example of trying to sell a running back peak. Other running back stuff is like immediate opportunity. And so whereas at wide receiver and quarterback and tight end, I'm not that worried about immediate opportunity in dynasty because I'm trying to take the longest view. These guys are going to be in the league if they're good for 5-6 years, hopefully. At running back, though, I mean, my God, I'm just trying to piece it together year by year because, as Amico said, it's like trying to forecast what the running back landscape will look like in 3 years is like literally impossible. And so I like leading into immediate opportunity. I thought Dave Montgomery was an interesting one for immediate opportunity. I know Jahmyr Gibbs is there, which is completely tanked Dave Montgomery's value. I still think he has a candidate to score a bunch of touchdowns this year. Cam Akers is one that Amico had in his article, as well as Pierre Strong. Amico, what do you think about the running back position and this immediate opportunity type of play in a trade?
Yeah, I mean, I like Akers from the standpoint that, like, I don't think that all his value is going to be tied into this year. Like, certainly he needs to have a productive season to have long-term value, but, he really crushed in the final 6 weeks. Last year, he averaged 18 PPR points per game, and he's still, extremely young. Like, this is still a 23-year-old running back. He's entering a contract year. Like, this reminds me a little bit of the Josh Jacobs situation, like where, we kind of just assume that Jacobs is going to get passed on by either a different running back that's been drafted, or that the team will not be very good, or that, just essentially that the production is not going to be there. And then you look at, Jacobs now, and his value is way higher, after having like this monster workhorse season. I'm not saying that Akers is going to have that exact level of production, but I think that the workload is probably going to be there. Like, Kyron Williams really wasn't very good last year. Zach Evans was a 6th round draft pick. Like, there's just not a lot here to compete with him. And, as long as Stafford and Cooper Kupp are healthy, like, the offense actually could end up being pretty decent. So I like Akers quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about a couple of other guys, but in case you guys want to weigh in on Akers.
Well, yeah. Well, my take on Cam Akers has been hard, and Evan and I have talked about this. It's hard to find a good ranking you feel good about on Cam Akers. What I will say is that a healthy Stafford and a healthy Kupp makes a massive difference for this team, and there'll be certainly more touchdown and efficiency opportunities. Evan, any thoughts on Akers or any other running backs that you want to mention with immediate opportunity in Dynasty?
Yeah, actually, I was hanging out with Pat Fitzmaurice yesterday, and we were just talking about players. Pat Fitzmaurice, he writes for Fantasy Pros. I think he won the Fantasy Pros Challenge in 2020 in terms of ranking accuracy. Very good analyst. This was one of the guys that he wanted to talk about because he's like, I'm coming in way higher than ADP on him. And I was like, I kind of am too. And it doesn't feel comfortable. I mean, he's got to be the most uncomfortable player to rank on the entire board, because you still have in the back of your mind that torn Achilles. And I mean, there were times last year where it felt like he was about to fall out of the league. But as Amico points out, I mean, look at this depth chart right now. I mean, first of all, they had so few resources. You remember the Rams draft, they like traded down a million times, wound up making like 10 picks on day 3 or something, just because they need like young talent on their roster. I mean, their roster had just been absolutely devastated by, their fuck them pick strategy. But look at, Kieran Williams. I mean, I love Kieran Williams, okay, but he's a special teamer, undersized, under 200 pounds. He's like a Theo Riddick style of player. He's not going to become some workhorse back. And then as Amico mentioned, 6th round pick Zach Evans, Ronnie Rivers, you remember him from a little bit last year. And then Tyon Evans is an undrafted free agent. I mean, that is the extent of their running back depth chart right now. I think Cam Akers is a buy in redraft, and I think you can be sold on him as a buy in Dynasty.
Yeah, if I have a contending team, I'm more inclined to trade for running back, right? Like, otherwise, I'm probably not as inclined to trade for running back. By the way, I don't know if you heard it, Amico, in there, but Evans said a negative thing about a Notre Dame player. He didn't talk glowingly about Kieran Williams there. So, yeah.
We're winning slowly.
We're winning. Anyways, we already talked about Ramondre Stevenson, but I know Pierre Strong is one of your buys. Amico, I mean, he's not expensive, but in some circles, I feel like he might be, because I have heard some buzz on Pierre Strong, but I feel like in some dynasty leagues he could be on waivers, and others people might think that he's like an actual asset. I don't know. What do you think about Pierre Strong?
Yeah, I mean, I've picked him up as basically like a throw-in, I feel like, to a couple of trades, and I think that that's kind of like where you want to be acquiring him. Really athletic player. I mean, ran in the 4.3s. He's over 200 pounds. And was super productive. I think that the one thing that's changed about how I view Pierre Strong the last year is that, like, it just doesn't sound like the Patriots have any inclination to use him as like a rusher. It seems like if he's going to fit in and have a role, it might be more in that James White or Shane Vereen archetype, which is fine because, the Patriots typically throw the ball to their running backs quite a bit. And he still has the athletic profile to kind of pay that off. So I think that he's just like a really, really easy grab. If you believe that there's any fragility in this Patriots backfield, which I think I kind of do, he would be the main beneficiary there. And kind of like sneakily, like Bill Belichick just like hasn't really used rookie running backs. Like he's handled this position way differently than every other coach. I feel like, he has two guys he drafted in the first round that he used decently. But like Ramondre is the only non-first rounder that's even had like 100 PPR points for him. And obviously, Belichick's coach for a long time and drafted a lot of running backs. So,
Yep.
Yeah, that's one thing that Thorman pointed out when we were talking about Ramondre is that, Belichick has a sort of a history of redshirting running backs as rookies, and then all of a sudden they become factors in year two. Pierre Strong was really a special teams player as a rookie. As Amico pointed out, he's an unbelievable athlete on paper, and he was super productive at South Dakota State. So I think he's got a chance. And I mean, he's a good guy to, have as like your RB5, RB6 with some upside.
Oh, buddy, you should see my teams. He'd be like the RB2 on my teams. Okay, let's go to one that I think is probably the best spot to find buys or perhaps more importantly sells. It's when the entire community is so excited about a guy, they get the full 3.9 inches, they cannot contain themselves. We saw this happen with Trey Lance. We saw this happen with George Pickens. We saw this happen with Sky Moore. I think it's happening right now with Anthony Richardson, where people are just outrageously excited for these guys as dynasty prospects. I guess we should start with Trey Lance because that's kind of the poster boy for it right now. I would say Amico. There's a lot of people out there who would say, man, Trey Lance is just like not good enough, period. I don't know that we can say that definitively yet. Is there still an appetite for Trey Lance in dynasty? And any thoughts on this talent evaluation, talent mirage stuff, the overhyped guys or the mega hyped guys, I would say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of bizarre that Lance still has like a QB 18 ADP in the FFPC. We have those, dynasty ADPs posted on the site. Like, I just don't really see it. I mean, I know that he's had probably like the most insane like first 3 years that you could have, 3 years that you can have as a quarterback. Like, didn't play behind Jimmy G, then gets the opportunity, gets hurt. Like, the off seasons I feel like have been super, super rough for him. But like chances, like I just feel like if they're like willing to move on from this guy that they've traded 3 first-round picks for Brock freaking Purdy, who is the last pick of the draft, like that has to be a red flag. And typically when these guys move on to other teams, it doesn't really work out. I mean, I actually don't think it's ever happened. Like in recent history, we have Mitch Trubisky, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen. Like, none of these guys go to other teams and end up being good. I mean, you can argue maybe, I guess, Geno Smith, but that's like 8 years after he's drafted. Like, that's not even worth holding on to. So, I think that if you can kind of get anything for Trey Lance right now, it's super worth it. Like, if someone's basically trying to middle this and be like, okay, like the upside's still there and we'll just pay for it, I think you just take that.
Yeah. Evan, I'm curious your take on that, but also more importantly, there's so many guys that I think the fantasy community falls in love with. I mentioned some of them: Pickens, DeAndre Swift, Sky Moore, Rashad Bateman, Anthony Richardson are all on my list as guys that are like mega hyped in fantasy circles, and that bleeds into dynasty. Any talent takes on any of these guys? Because I think that's really what we're trying to get at here is just like, are these guys, is Sky Moore actually good? Is George Pickens actually good?
I think that George Pickens is good. I mean, I do. I don't know what I couldn't really tell what you guys. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about Trey Lance first.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the whole point in the Kyle Shanahan system, and especially the way that they've built their roster, is to get the ball out quickly and to these playmakers that are unbelievable after the catch. George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. You remember Ayuk was like the best after catch receiver coming out of Arizona State in the entire nation. Even Juwan Jennings is good with the ball in his hands. Their RBs, obviously Christian McCaffrey, like their entire offense is built around getting the ball out quickly into the playmakers to let them run after the catch. Trey Lance is like very deliberate. He's got like a wind up. He's just, it doesn't seem like it's going to work out. And they would just rather go with, they're on that Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo spectrum, Brock Purdy, who is really good at getting the ball out quickly. And even, and we've even heard that Trey Lance is not necessarily ahead of Sam Darnold. So just the writing on the wall is just not good for Trey Lance. And I'm with you. Like, if you can get something for Trey Lance right now, and it seems like you might be able to because he's got that quarterback 18 ADP. Where are we at? Quarterback 32 on him. I think it's time to. I think it's time to kind of give up that ghost.
Yeah, and I think his ADP will start sinking in dynasties. People come to grips with the fact that he's probably not the favorite or anywhere near it to be the 49ers starter this year. I kind of have a different take on George Pickens, man. I was worried about the way he played last year. Like, just didn't seem to be open very much. And the routes that they were putting him on just were not conducive to fantasy. I mean, Deontay Johnson, I don't think is very good, but I mean, he just absolutely dominated targets still from George Pickens. And I don't know, I'm okay with George Pickens, but man, he's going high. I mean, ADP in Dynasty is 55th overall. That's higher than Traylon Burks. That's higher than Terry McLaurin. That's higher than Brendan Ayuk. That's higher than Calvin
Well,
Ridley.
that's ridiculous.
That's
higher
than
Christian. The highlight catches, man. That's what it is.
But like, this is my exact point.
Hey, those are fun, But I mean, this is ridiculous that he's going ahead of us.
And this is my point for the archetype. The archetype is talent mirage. People who aren't as good as maybe the general public thinks. I think George Pickens falls into that when compared to other wide receivers. So I would be trying to sell George Pickens now if I can. DeAndre Swift is another one that we talked about some. On the Silva Top 150 release show. I think DeAndre Swift is an interesting sell right now. Bateman and Anthony Richardson, I think are interesting to talk about as well. I still believe in Rashad Bateman, but they have added plenty of competition for him, and he hasn't exactly popped off yet. And Anthony Richardson, if you think he's not good or you think he's not that good, this is going to be the peak of his value, most likely. So yeah, Amico, any further thoughts on any of those guys that I mentioned?
Yeah, I think the issue with Bateman would be that like we're probably the highest on him. Like I think that the market has actually moved fairly quickly on his value. Richardson, I think, is super interesting. I mean, I love this guy. Like I think he's awesome. Like we rank him very, very highly. I think we're aggressive versus the market, and I'm not really looking to move him unless I think someone is willing to overpay. But the thing is, like, people are willing to overpay right now. Like, Richardson obviously has gone to like the nut landing spot. I think people are super excited, obviously, about the athletic profile. And, something that Leone has always kind of reminded me of is that, like, we have to still consider, like, the probability of these guys not hitting. And, right now he's pretty much valued as, like, he's going to hit, maybe not at full strength. I mean, if he hits at full strength, he's going to be in that top tier. But,
right.
We're kind of not factoring that in right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out there who would, like, they'd be shocked if Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson don't turn out to be like the same player, which getting to Jalen Hurts level, even if you like Anthony Richardson, I like Anthony Richardson, even if you think that getting to where Jalen Hurts is at right now is still a pretty tall task. So yeah, he's certainly massively, massively expensive right now in Dynasty. All right. I want to get to some of this age stuff. So obviously at running back, it's very clear. I think any competent Dynasty player understands what the age curve looks like at running back. At tight end and wide receiver, it's different. I mean, we have Travis Kelce at age 33, 34, still out here dominating. Other tight ends have been very good as they get older as well. But we get this group here of Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Dallas Goedert, Darren Waller. They're all around 29, 31, 33 years old. Amico, how do you think about age curves at the tight end position in Dynasty? And then maybe specific, how would you handle those guys, the aging, but very good tight ends?
Yeah, I'm trying to be a year ahead, I think, versus a year too late at this position. I mean, it's not quite running back, but it's definitely not wide receiver in terms of the longevity you can expect. I mean, these guys take a huge pounding in the run game. They are not going to age super gracefully. Obviously, Travis Kelce has, which is incredible. But that's kind of like the conundrum, right? Is that, the position is so bad that, a guy like Kelce who, like, I mean, Father Time can take over at any moment, but he's still like running laps over the position. George Kittle has still been like an elite fantasy tight end. Goddard's been good. Waller wasn't very good last year, but the year before he was awesome. Like, it's a really, really tough dichotomy. But I think that, like, there's just so much young talent now coming into the position that this is the perfect time to try to make some of those swaps. I mean, we already mentioned Okonkwo and Dulcich, but like, I think Jelani Woods is good. Obviously we mentioned Kyle Pitts, Freiermuth, Hawkinson. Like there's plenty of like under 28 guys. Most of these guys under 25 that are really talented. And we just had this like all-time great tight end class, supposedly.
Yeah.
So I think that we're going to start seeing kind of a shift here. So, if you're not like a stone contender in these like tight end premium leagues, I think you definitely want to make a move. And even if you are a contender, like I think like being in position to trade Kelsey for like a Okonkwo and something else. Like you could probably get something like pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Just because, you know, Kelsey's immediate point production is going to be valued pretty highly.
Right. And there's going to be a lot of people that are leaning really hard on redraft rankings when making dynasty trades. If you look at any redraft ranking, Travis Kelce is going to be in the top 6 here. Evan, any thoughts on the tight end position and how some of these guys are aging? I mean, I still like George Kittle and Goddard and Andrews this year, but to Amico's point, they're all pushing over 30 years old.
Yeah, I mean, Kittle came out of Iowa. He's a little old. Goddard came out of South Dakota State. He was pretty old. Waller, shoot, he was playing wide receiver at Georgia Tech like a decade ago.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I mean, these guys are hitting the concerning territory in terms of age.
Yeah. And we have guys like Amico mentioned, Sam Laporta is in the mix down here. A bet on talent guy at tight end who I like, that I don't know what the market thinks of him too much, but Isaiah Likely is a guy that, like, if he ever gets a chance, I'm pretty confident will be productive. And then you have Evans' boy down there, Juwan Johnson. I mean, there's a lot of options. It's tough, you know, because the position, if you have a Kelsey or Andrews or Goddard, they're worth so much versus the immediate field that it's tough to pull the trigger on it. You know, it's just tough to like give that up right now. But that's why Howie's the best. You know, Howie Roseman, he would be a great dynasty owner. He's always getting out a year early instead of a year late. You mentioned wide receivers lasting a little bit longer, Amico. I still start to get worried around age 30 or 31 at the wide receiver position. How do you think about wide receivers in the aging curve? And then I did want to talk about in the context a little bit of Amari Cooper, who I thought was really good last year, and I think will get much better quarterback play this year, but is 29 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you want to see like where these receivers win first. I mean, I think the guys that are making like the spectacular plays down the field, like Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, like these guys who really rely on their physical attributes, like they're probably not going to age as well as, you know, maybe like a Julian Edelman, you know, Cooper Kupp. Those kind of guys may age a little bit better. Maybe Kupp isn't the best example just because he's been hurt a bunch of times, but I think just in terms of like how they play, you would expect them to age a little bit better. Amari is super interesting because, like you said, like he was so good last year, and the quarterback play should be better. Like I kind of think that he's like someone that you buy if you're a contender, like for like a late first round pick or something. Like I think that that's like a deal you can kind of swing. But like generally speaking, like yeah, like now would be kind of the time to get off, just because like whoever's buying like a guy like Amari Cooper or like, you know, Mike Evans, like they're still bankable production that they know that they're getting, and that's what's going to be able to, you know, make that trade possible.
I'll tell you what, and again, I'm talking about best ball, you know, redraft, but on Underdog, like those guys are always at the top of the queue. Like Amari Cooper is like pretty inexpensive, and no one wants Mike Evans.
Yeah. And I mean, there's been a lot of rumors around Mike Evans as well. I would have moved on from Mike Evans if I was the Bucs in an effort to tank for Caleb, but they decided not to. So yeah, Mike Evans looks like he'll be back there with Chris Godwin. But I do think that understanding where you are in the standings, like Amico alluded to, is a really important thing when you're talking about trading for or trading away wide receivers like that. I mean, on paper, Amari Cooper is like the exact kind of player I want in Dynasty. At least he was a few years ago. Now he's starting to get up there in age. All right. All of our Dynasty content is up on the site and is continuously updated for all the news. Amico, tell the people where they can find you, not on the football field, but on the machine.
Yeah, just find me on Twitter, Adam Eeksta, and we got all the awesome Dynasty stuff at ETR.
Yes. And you can find myself and Evan with normal Twitter handle names, our full names, no spaces, at Evan Silva and at Adam Levitan. That is going to do it for this Dynasty Buys and Sells edition. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you guys ever have requests for shows, I know there's a lot of Dynasty people out there. We're doing our best. Dynasty is unique because every league is so unique. I hope this was helpful. Please let us know in the comments if it was. Thank you all for listening. If you haven't subscribed yet to the Establish the Run podcast, be sure you are by searching for it anywhere podcasts are found. We'll be back next week for a big best ball series. I'll be talking to King Virgins, Leone, and Herzig about all angles. It's going to be a 3, 4, maybe even 5-part series on best ball as we get ready for best ball summer. Stay tuned for that. For Evan, for Amico, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.